Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Mediator group says Boko Haram is tired of fighting, wants quick dialogue to end the war on insurgency. Convener of Bring Back Our Girls campaign says government should do more, insists on rescue of the girls. Students of public schools in Osun State reject demands from the authorities for tax receipts, also want their teachers' salaries paid. And confusion in Burkina Faso as interim president and prime minister are detained by a presidential guard. A quick reminder to you that all our top stories are on our website, channelstv.com, and on youtube.com/channelsweb. And do visit m.channelstv.com to view us live on your mobile device. You can also download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows phones from their respective stores. And we urge you to interact with the Eyewitness feature on the Android, iOS and Windows platforms. If you have pictures or videos to share with us, tap the application on your device, swipe to reveal the Eyewitness menu and follow the instructions. Well, some of you have already been doing that. Here are some pictures that we've received from all over the nation. We begin with this picture of the rubble of a section of a shopping complex undergoing construction, which collapsed after a downpour. Our reporter, who sent this in from Gusau in Zamfara State, says the building has deep cracks and should be pulled down altogether. Next is this report of tankers, which our Eyewitness reporter says are parked on the Iyanoisolo Road all the way to the international airport in Lagos. He reports that it's been a tough situation driving to and from work. Our next report is from Kaduna State, showing this overloaded truck still carrying people. Our Eyewitness reporter says road safety officials should stop this trend to save lives. And from Abuja-Lokoja Expressway comes this report of these people, whom our reporter says are motorists protesting after an accident allegedly caused by a police checkpoint. Finally is this curious picture from Muda Lawal Market in Bauchi State, showing a bicycle loaded with baskets. Thanks a lot for sending in all those pictures, and please do keep them coming in to us. Now, the chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Chidi Odenkalu, has asked President Muhammadu Buhari to speak to Nigerians about his plans for the nation and the country, instead of revealing his plans during his visits to foreign countries. Professor Odenkalu said the president's trend of announcing his plans in foreign countries is inconsiderate of the needs of Nigerians who elected him. Speaking to legal luminaries on integrity and accountability in Abuja, the Human Rights Chairman said the era of change which the President has launched requires that he carries Nigerians along first.
A gathering of legal luminaries designed to brainstorm on the roles of integrity and accountability in national development. It is also set to create a dialogue for national renewal by overhauling the country's integrity system to ensure foolproof accountability. The thrust of discussion by legal advocates here is that development in Nigeria can neither be advanced nor sustained while impunity and lack of accountability are allowed in the public service and government at all levels.
Where integrity and accountability is deficient, corruption thrives, leading to resource misallocation, decisions not being made in public interest, foreign and domestic investors are scared of by unpredictable business environments.
In an era of change, every expectation is on the anti-graft agencies to genuinely check fraud to cause accountability. The chairman of the Human Rights Commission, Professor Odenkalu, said the change needed to instill integrity that will cause development will be led by the president, who he says will start by talking to Nigerians.
Change from where we are to where we have to get to involves a discursive process of leaders talking to Nigerians. The idea of always hearing things from our president when he is outside the country is offensive. Change is important. We've got to confront it. We need change in order to achieve integrity. We need change for accountability. We need change for a developed country. We need a leadership that will not take Nigerians for granted. We need a leadership that will trust our people, speak to our people like we are mature, speak to us like we own this country.
These legal professionals observe that there are many challenges that Nigeria needs to tackle, chief among them insecurity, unemployment, infrastructure, health and education. But any efforts made to set these sectors right towards development will be unsuccessful without integrity and accountability across board. Omelogo, Nadi Channels Television News.
Now let's turn our attention now to the visit of the President of France, where he also disclosed that the federal government is in talks with the terrorists over the release of the Chibok girls. That revelation came during President Muhammadu Buhari's visit with the Nigerian business community in France. He had earlier held meetings with the French President François Hollande, where France agreed to contribute 130 million euros for military supports for Nigeria and intelligence gathering, including equipment. The amount is also meant for infrastructure development. Both leaders also discussed new strategies that will enable Nigeria and her neighbors through the multinational joint task force to fight the insurgency and restore peace. President Hollande recalled that in 2014, France hosted a regional summit on security in Paris, which brought together the presidents of West Africa to determine a strategy for fighting the insurgency. Now, joining me to examine the President's visit to France is a Professor of International Law and Jurisprudence, Professor Akin Oyebode. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us on the News at 10 tonight.
It's my pleasure.
All right, the President told the global community that Nigeria is now negotiating with Boko Haram. Did you see that coming?
Well, there were snippets of information previously that something was in the works. And I'm on record as having warned the President that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I just listened to Dr. Odinkalu, and I'm at one with him that the President needs to take Nigeria into greater confidence. I think we have been overindulgent with President Buhari and should be constantly reminded that the people are sovereign, not himself. The way he has been pronouncing important policy positions abroad, I think bespeaks some level of taking Nigerians for granted. That what can they do? But I think we have gone past that. He is a man who had a pan-Nigerian mandate and should constantly renew that mandate by touching base with the Nigerian people. So I agree that discussing with Boko Haram should be very discreet. It's not something that you advertise in the mass media. But I'm a little bit uncomfortable that it was in France that Nigerians learned of that development.
Were you expecting him to have an address to address us by presidential broadcast? What were you expecting?
About time. He's more than 3 months in power, and nothing stopped him from an address to the nation. He has not had this type of conferences, press chats that President Obasanjo pioneered, and which Goodluck Ebele Jonathan followed on. I think after more than 100 days in office, maybe he's keeping things until 1st of October. But the question of who really is paramount, the Nigerian people in Nigeria or Nigerians in diaspora, I think greater relevance should be sought for the Nigerian people who elected him into office.
Let's look at some of his trips. He's spent the first couple of months that he's been in office traveling regionally, internationally. The opposition have already said it's not going to yield much. Do you see these trips as yielding tangible results beyond taking us, making us look better in terms of our image?
No, I think it's beyond that. We must appreciate the initiative of the President trying to rally the neighboring countries behind the Nigerian effort to contain the insurgency threat. Nigeria is surrounded by Francophone countries. The fact that he had to go to Paris shows that he recognizes the role that France has continued to play in African politics, a tradition that goes all the way back to Charles de Gaulle, continued by even people like Mitterrand, Pompidou, and now Holland. I think the French have, they are stakeholders in the project, especially containing the Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, what they've been doing in Mali. So definitely the president wants to elicit full support by the French. And mind you, France is a very important player in the European Union, coming next in my reckoning to Germany. But in terms of the stake of France in Nigerian economy, I think it's quite massive. There was a time France overtook Britain as the largest foreign investor in the Nigerian economy. I don't have the figures now. I know some French companies like Michelin have departed these shores, but the French are still very much present in the Nigerian economy. Total is here, for instance. And of course, you know that France has exports things from pharmaceuticals to all manner of industrial goods.
Okay, Prof, let's just look at governance and his style, for instance. Looking at the team the president has taken to France, majorly permanent secretaries, do they match up to the ministers that we have on the French side? Are these the people who should be having these conversations at this time?
Well, they don't scare up to the issue, because you can't continue to allow technocrats to usurp the role of ministers who are to drive the economy. That's part of the problems that some people see with the Buhari presidency. Nigerians are getting sick and tired of a one-man band. I think the president should live up to his billing of telling us who his ministers are going to be. He said by the end of this month. That gives him 2 weeks barely.
He said September.
And the Senate is still on recess, so they have to confirm his nominees and what have you. He can't continue to be a sole administrator. The ministers that ought to have accompanied him are nowhere, because they've not even been announced, they've not been confirmed, they've not taken office. And nature abhors a vacuum. And that is why the technocrats have been playing the role of ministers.
So in the event that the ministers come, what sort of foreign policy direction should the Buhari administration be taking beyond these trips that we're seeing now, you know?
We don't even have an idea of what his domestic policy is, because foreign policy is a reflection of domestic policy. We don't know his economic program. There's been a lot of noise and brouhaha about anti-corruption, but that is not a foreign policy matter per se, except to elicit the support of foreign countries that might have information as to where Nigerian resources have been salted in terms of the looted funds,
yes.
In terms of repatriating these funds. The Americans have promised, you remember when the president visited the American president and discussed with quite a number of officials, the Americans promised to help us in the retrieval of the humongous sums that have been salted away in foreign banks. I think the Loretta Lynch, who is the Attorney General of the U.S., definitely will make good offices available to help Nigeria trace loot. I don't know about the French. I don't know how much of the loot is in French banks, but I know the European Union, too, thinks very highly of President Buhari, and they can be seen to enlist in the support of his presidency.
Professor of International Law and Jurisprudence, thank you so much, Professor Akin Oyebode, for joining us on the News at 10 tonight.
You're welcome.
Now, when the News at 10 returns, Debt Management Office, that's the DMO, waves aside JP Morgan's delisting of Nigerian bonds.